CNBC बाजार प्रस्तुत करता है क्रिप्टो कॉर्नर पावर्ड बाय बाइनेंस।
नमस्कार, क्रिप्टो कॉर्नर में आज के मेहमान हैं बॉर्डरलेस के सीईओ केविन लेटिनिटी। केविन, बहुत शुक्रिया साथ जुड़ने के लिए। एंड जहां तक बॉर्डरलेस की बात है, इट इज रिसेंटली लॉन्च्ड अ मेजर पायलट विद मास्टरकार्ड अप्लाइंग मास्टरकार्ड crypto credentials to cross-border stablecoin payments. You've noted that while moving money is easy, it is trust and compliance that are the difficult things, especially when you deal in 100 countries.
Really what we do all at Borderless is we provide the connectivity layer that connects all of these stablecoin enabled PSPs together for rails and liquidity. And we're great at the technical infrastructure. We're great at the operations infrastructure, but we're not necessarily great at creating compliance frameworks and governance that can scale globally. So what MasterCard has done through this pilot with Borderless is they've said their core business is creating governance and trust that scales globally, right? Whether it's products like MasterCard Move or the card networks. So they're bringing that into the stablecoin world in this pilot with us. So instead of having to go and KYB or KYC with a dozen different locally regulated entities for payments companies or financial institutions or fintechs that want to move funds into 60 different countries, now they can go and they can get their compliance program reviewed by MasterCard. And as long as that compliance program meets the governance standards, then they can be part of this crypto credential ecosystem that's connected into Borderless. And through that ecosystem, they can transact with any of the locally regulated counterparties that are also part of that same governance standard. So outside of the stablecoin world, right, imagine a world in which the banks had to KYB with every other bank they ever wanted to send money to. That doesn't work, right? Reliance is how we do compliance at scale in financial systems. And with the MasterCard pilot, we can finally bring that to stablecoins.
Kevin, masterclass is traditional finance, and when you look at stablecoins, well, that is decentralized. Would you say that the asset speed with traditional multi-party rulebooks is what you're working with right now?
So the compliance aspect is actually incredibly similar. If we step back from the stablecoin layer for a minute, ultimately what MasterCard's core business is, I would argue, and granted I don't work at MasterCard, I would argue it's not cards. I would argue that it's franchise rules, right? And yes, we have decentralized assets in the sense of stablecoins, but we still have centralized market participants. And what I mean by that is the on and off ramp in the US, right, is often licensed by the OCC, or at least has money transmission licenses. The on and off ramp in Brazil is licensed by the Brazil regulatory regime. The on and off ramps in India are licensed by the Indian regulatory regime, et cetera, et cetera. So while the settlement asset itself is decentralized, something like USDC, USDT, OUSD that you could theoretically take into unhosted wallets and things like that, when you're at the perimeter of stablecoins and the local banking rails, that on-ramping and off-ramping activity, that's not decentralized, right? That's done by centralized, locally regulated players. And those are the perfect types of companies that you can bring franchise rules to.
All right. वेल केविन हमें बता रहे हैं कि उन्होंने मास्टरकार्ड के साथ यहाँ पर एक पायलट प्रोजेक्ट किया है जहाँ पर मास्टरकार्ड के द्वारा जो 100 कंट्रीज जहाँ पे वो डील करता है वहाँ पर स्टेबल कॉइन्स के जरिए यहाँ पर काम हो पाएगा। ऑफ कोर्स हर कंट्री की अपनी अलग अलग रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस हैं क्रॉस बॉर्डर पेमेंट्स को लेकर, फॉरेक्स को लेकर भी, और इन चीज़ों के साथ वो यहाँ पर मास्टरकार्ड के साथ एज ऑफ नाउ काम कर रहे हैं। लेकिन केविन, लुकिंग एट करंट लैंडस्केप, हाउ हैव एंटरप्राइज एक्सपेक्टेशंस शिफ्टेड from basic token issuances to demanding sophisticated, automated back-end forex routing?
I think when we look at what our customers are doing, they're starting from very, very simple pilots, right? And we sell primarily into enterprise scale PSPs, corporates, fintechs, and then banks a little bit now. And what we've seen is a lot of this started with exploration, and a lot of this started with pilots. And the pilots all came with tremendous skepticism. Right, I've been moving money around the world using correspondent banking or using fintech infrastructure, right? Think of like the AirWallexes of the world for a very, very long time. Are stablecoins and is blockchain technology actually going to accomplish anything for me? Or is this just another fad that's going to die off like so many others? And what we're seeing now around expectations is that people are getting actual money movement. And it all depends on the corridors, right? A lot of what we spend our time on is, does this corridor actually make sense for stablecoins? Let's take something like EU-US, makes absolutely no sense. Most traded FX pair in the world. SWIFT settles T0 in most of those corridors. There's really not much value proposition. But when you get into emerging markets and when you get into exotics, that's where we look at what is the cost of pre-funding these balances and what is the cost from an FX perspective of being in a volatile currency or forward hedging that currency away. And that's where we start to see that, wait a minute, if I have a way where I can move value 24/7 in near real time, now all of a sudden, instead of a week's worth of float that I need to hold in this country in order to pre-fund my transactions, now all of a sudden that cuts down to a day or even to a few hours. And that's where we're seeing the cost savings from corporates. And ultimately, what they care about is reliability, security, and compliance more so than anything else. And that's part of why this pilot is such a big deal for the stablecoin world, because reliability is really solved at the local layer. Security is solved in part by companies like Borderless, but also by the wallet providers and that part of the industry. And now compliance and trust, to have a player the size of MasterCard step into it is really an incredible milestone.
वेल एब्सोल्युटली, यहाँ पर अब मिनटों में काम होने लगा है जहाँ पर कंट्री टू कंट्री फंड्स शिफ्ट करने की बात की जा रही है। केविन, बहुत शुक्रिया साथ जुड़ने के लिए। तो काफ़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग काम यहाँ पर किया जा रहा है बॉर्डरलेस और मास्टर कार्ड के बीच में, जहाँ पर करीबन 80 से 100 कंट्रीज के बीच में अब एक क्रॉस बॉर्डर पेमेंट चलती हुई नजर आ रही है और ये स्टेबल कॉइन्स के द्वारा है। स्टेबल कॉइन्स वो कॉइन्स होते हैं जो कि बैक्ड बाय होते हैं फिएट या कमोडिटी। डॉलर से ज़्यादा ये बैकिंग होती है यहाँ पर, लेकिन गोल्ड से भी बैकिंग यहाँ पर स्टेबल कॉइन्स में देखने को मिलती है। तो ये काफ़ी सेफ, ऑटोमेटेड, रिलायबल और कंप्लायंस के साथ किया जाने वाला काम है, जैसे हमें केविन बता रहे थे। वेल, इसी के साथ फिलहाल इस कार्यक्रम में इतना ही समय है, मुझे दीजिए इजाजत।
CNBC बाजार प्रस्तुत करता है क्रिप्टो कॉर्नर, पावर्ड बाय बाइनेंस।